G'day everyone, welcome. Looking forward to a good night tonight. This is Locky. You may only just be able to see him. It is now only red ampersand rather than his high vis. I thought if he stuck around with his high noon shirt, then we'd probably have to pay him.
Yeah,
So
that's fair.
thought we might change. Thanks for coming along. Pretty excited about tonight. It should be good to just break down some of the nitty gritties of mixing broadcast, and I think most of the conversation, from what I hear, is going to be centered around vocals, and so should be really good. And we're going to run some tracks from I think the 26th of last month. So we'll play around with those and just try out some different processing and whatever they want to do. So Blaine's in the control room there at the moment. He'll come out in a sec. Locky as well, and I might pipe up from time to time with snide comments. You never know.
Mad.
Depends if I'm feeling feisty or not. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly intro and let you know kind of why I wanted to start these sessions and kind of what it's all about. I think we did really well in terms of like getting the stream started and getting it together, and just getting something out the door. And those initial first few weeks were really high quality, I think, and even in terms of like the audio particularly, and camera shots and stuff, like super high quality. And then I think we kind of missed the mark on a couple of things. So I didn't want to just leave you guys in the lurch with no support from either myself or other team members or anything like that. So this is a bit of a better late than never kind of training and everyone getting better together. And so this is just the first in this kind of little weekly series that I want to start. I don't know how long we'll go for, but we'll kick off some audio. I want to get into some lighting in a few weeks, get into some camera shots and video editing stuff, and just roam around all the different production areas. And so that's kind of my heart for these Level Up Together sessions. And I call it that just because let's all just get better together. Let's all learn from each other. And no one person is an expert here. We're all trying to work this thing out together.
Yep.
Some of us have just done it before, and that's helpful. So with that, I'll probably just get out of the way and hand over to Blaine and Locky, and they can take it from there. Peace out. See you later.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're keen to just get in and show you a few tips and tricks that Blaine and I have. Blaine and I both have professional experience in sound, and Blaine has a bit more of an expertise in studio, which is kind of a little bit more related to broadcast than sort of mixing out on speakers. So I'm looking forward to hearing what Blaine has to say as well. We've had some big conversations over the last few weeks. Thanks for joining me, Blaine. High vis looks good. Andy stitched you. Cool. So if you have any comments or whatever, or questions as we go along, chuck them in the comment section. Andy will try and pipe them through to us if we have time.
Yeah, they'll be a bit delayed, but that's all right. We can always come back, circle back.
Yeah. So even if Andy wants to take a few notes and stuff, and we'll come back if we have time at the end to just smash through a couple of quick things that you guys have any queries on, or if you agree or disagree on anything we say, let us know, because like Andy said, Blaine and I are not the best. We're not experts. We're just maybe a little bit more experienced than some other people because we've done it before.
Like more outspoken.
Yeah.
That's all I've got going for me.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, as Andy said, we've got a multi-track of the service on the 26th of April AM. So don't actually remember who did that one, but it's recorded straight through. I think I hear Eliza and Pills singing. So both.
I think Pills is MD maybe.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
Sure. Anyway, the vocals on the quick 5-second listen that I had on them, they sounded pretty good. So I think it should be pretty easy to just get in and process them kind of how we think it should be to achieve the best result, as opposed to trying to EQ out bad things, I guess. As you can see, we got the screen here as well. pipped on. So as we're doing stuff on the screen, you'll be able to follow along, just so that you're able to understand exactly what we're doing and be able to hopefully replicate that to give us all the best broadcast mixes once we're at that. Because, like, in my opinion, I think we'll be doing this for a couple more months yet. And if not, it's been so successful so far. Who knows? We might keep doing it. That'd be pretty cool as well. So I think, as Blaine made a great comment the other day, that on our Google Meet, that this isn't a new skill or a different skill. It's an additional skill that will help us be better, whether we're doing it for broadcast, for studio, for once we're back able to meet as a church, once we're able to get out in front of some speakers again. Everything we're doing here is going to help us with that, not just once we're in the studio and trying to mix it there. So, yeah, what are you keen to...
I think we already touched on it, but we'll probably mainly want to really go hard on vocals tonight, look at vocals. I think there's been, and I don't think it's on the vocalists or necessarily on the sound guys, there's just been a bit of a lack of attention to our vocals overall. And I think, if anything, sort of been the weaker link. It's not been the worship leading, and it's not been the like crafting of the sets or the overall mix, but it just has been our vocal specifically. And I mean, even just off the cuff, you know, it's the difference between hearing this like this, and this is how our vocals are sort of coming through on our live mix. It sounds like this a bit sometimes, as opposed to having a bit of space and a bit of hearing the room in as well. And I think we can approach that a few ways. And if we can talk about that tonight, get a few concepts across. I dropped a link to a YouTube tutorial today into the audio channel, and that for me has been the biggest eye-opener. I used that. I used a lot of information from that same resource whilst mixing the single. And like you said, like, we both got experience, but for me it was a long time ago actually doing audio.
Yeah.
And I guess I had to really eat humble pie coming to this, like, oh yeah, I'm going to record this single, you know. Jordan's no more in terms of here working hands-on with us. Someone has to do it, and I think I can do it, but I just know that my skills are going to fall short, especially in the studio world. And so I just had to be like, okay, back to basics. Like, I'm going to go through somebody's material from start to finish and just admit that 20 years in, I still haven't, you know, got any idea how to go from a structured way from all faders at 0 and no effects to a cohesive mix. So
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just jump in on that one actually. Like, I think that's a really good point. Like, being humble enough to admit that you don't know enough.
I was scared, I think, is probably a better way to put it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But
sure.
yeah.
But
that led to me being humbled.
that's been something that has been an ongoing conversation, I think, in terms of like getting live streaming going. Is like, well, I haven't ever done it before, so I need to be humble enough to reach out. The video guys haven't done it in that way before, so we need to be humble. Like, and it's in every area of production that we're finding that.
Definitely.
Totally.
And I think, the audio by its nature and how much of a priority it is in terms of like sending that message across the screen. Like, it just happens to be more exposing than some other things.
Absolutely.
Totally.
That's all it is.
Yeah, especially in the broadcast spectrum. Like my first tip that I think I've probably said to everyone that's been on broadcast so far when I've been here is that you cannot hide. Like, everything is so direct. As Blaine's saying, instead of a mic, we're getting this sort of sound. We're not having our vocals reverberate around the room naturally. Like, we're having to add everything that makes a vocal normally sound good live.
Yeah, resonate and have resonance and reverberance and whatnot.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I think, like, it's hard. And even for me, like, I've done, like, before we started doing this, I'd done a couple of music broadcasts. I'd mostly done, like, sports, so boxing and rugby league and stuff. So that's all about having heaps of ambience and being able to hear the balls being thrown, the referee calls, them stomping on the boxing ring, for example. And that just doesn't necessarily translate in broadcast. So, like, it's hard. It was hard for me as well. Like, don't get me wrong by any means. Like, I was here on week 1 and 2 and stuff, and I had to relearn a lot of stuff. And even I was on Sunday morning, this just gone, and I was playing around with reverb a little bit to try and get it just like get some life back into it. And it's so hard because that reverb is not added into the room. It is going straight down the pipe into our congregation speakers at home, and generally not good speakers as well. I would say 70%, maybe more, maybe less, I don't know, would just be listening through either laptop or TV or phone speakers. Like, they're not listening through actual speakers made for music, as we generally get on a Sunday out here in the auditorium with speakers designed kind of for the space and to fill it fully. Like, you're very rarely going to get as good a audio environment at home.
Absolutely not. And Trevor asked a really good question in relation to the mixed comp, and that applies to this as well. I think the biggest challenge for us here is how it translates, and that's a good word to use, because we're trying to look at how does it translate across a whole range of different mediums, like, or when I say mediums, like systems. So it's the age-old thing that you do when you're kind of trying to mix something in the studio is like, try it on dodgy iPhone headphones that come free with your iPhone. Try it on, your car stereo that's like way hyped in the low end. Like, try it on your home stereo that's always got that low end, high end shelf on it that makes it sound better. Try it through your computer speakers, and the challenge or the real high point is when you can just make it sound good on everything. And I think in it's hard when you're mixing in the studio. It's not a great sounding room, but they are like $5,000 monitors that are in there. So
totally
nothing's going to translate as good as those do.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think something else as well. Bring along, make sure you have your phone charged or a laptop or something. It's now a standard process for Andy in the Slack chat, but during rehearsal he'll post a YouTube link. Pull it up on your phone, on your laptop, and whatever you have available to bring with you, and have a listen to it. If you have
that was great Sunday morning because I was at work, and so I just happened to be on a break then, so I tune into the rehearsal. And Locky and I were just talking backwards and forwards.
And it's tuning, really helpful. Tweaking. To just have that feedback then and there, because the thing is, it's busy on a morning or afternoon during rehearsal. We don't have the resource available for our service producer to come in and have a listen, or even our monitor engineer, another audio person, to just have that reference. But I think it's important for us as the broadcast engineers to listen to as many possible situations that the people at home will be listening to. Obviously, you can't replicate everything, and we don't have the resource to provide everything for you, unfortunately. But even bring along your phone and your iPod earphones or whatever. That is 2 other reference points that will sound honestly so different to what those $5,000
absolutely don't bring your in-ears, because you've already got good reference here. I'd say there's a decent pair of headphones always floating around. Bring your standard headphones that come with your phone, whether it's Android based or iPhone or whatever. Because they're going to be the best thing that sounds a bit more hollow, a bit more tinny, a bit more mid-range focus. So
what the congregation will be using.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if it translates on that, it'll probably translate better through laptops and TVs.
Yeah, for sure.
So Mez, I guess we'll jump in and have a listen to some stuff. That's enough of us waffling on.
Let's do it.
Where do you want me to go from here? How far back?
I brought it mostly forward, so.
Oh yeah, okay. So just start
of the set. Yeah.
Cool. Spacebar just to go.
Yeah. Cool. I have everything down, so
bring it up.
Let me just bring up kind of everything, and then we'll go from there.
Oh yeah, no pills is leading.
Protection, our future, and our hope this morning. So church, come on, let's sing together as we lift up his name. We need no other hiding place, and I hope hope is safe within your name. This we know, this we know. As you promise never to forsake. What you began, you will sustain. This we know, this we know. Come on, we sing. And I will call upon your love, for He alone is strong enough to save. And rise, your shackles are no more, for Jesus Christ has broken every chain. Thank you, Lord. All the heavens and the earth.
So straight away there you can hear, I mean, you know, we're going to talk about vocals, I guess, but you can hear how much the vocals get like sucked out of the mix as soon as there's so much low end energy from like once kick drum and bass are really driving in a chorus.
Yep.
The dynamic range just gets squashed from here to like here, meaning that all of a sudden where you had vocals sitting over this nice open verse groove that's like sort of sitting back and it's, you know, it's not like thumping. And then you go to like guitars, keys with, you know, lots of left hand, bass like on the eights rather than sort of sitting on a more open groove. And all of a sudden the vocals, like you hear it sort of coming, like punctuation of words rather than detail. And detail's really hard to get already on dynamic microphones or on condensers that have probably been a bit flogged like our stage mics. So yeah, anyway, keep going.
Yeah.
You want to say anything, sorry? Well,
No, not really.
Yeah.
I think it's
keep playing
yeah.
for now.
This morning. So let's get into it.
Let's get into it. We'll do that again. Let's go from like this before the chorus.
What you began, you will sustain.
It's still open here and you can actually make out
This we know,
detail and Smithy's
this we know.
chorus
We
hits.
sing. And I will call upon your love, for He alone.
So all the transients on like hi-hats, front end of a snare, even like the beater of the kick drum just really like obscures all the consonants and all the, you know, on Smithy's vocal there.
Yeah.
And I mean that's something where we need to get control, obviously, the rest of the mix. But I think, like, generally speaking, well, all you audio guys that are watching, you've been doing a pretty good job of that part of it. And maybe it's, you know, a little bit more work on compressors another time, or we can, you know, I can keep trying to find resources that I've found helpful. But once you can get that instrument bed under control, it makes your job easier as well, processing vocals. So.
Yeah, for sure. Just a quick note, we have not sound checked any of these tracks based on this. This is just using the scene, I think it was David's scene on Sunday night. It's just loaded in, like different electric being used, different, like same keys but different parts.
Yeah.
Like different vocals. So
I'd say straight up, probably keys can just drop a bit because we've got heaps of left hand, and maybe like roll out a bit more low end as well, just to make this a bit easier on us.
yeah.
This we know, this we know, this we know. Yeah. And every enemy will flee as we declare your victory. This we know.
This isn't a technical thing, but straight up there, that thing that's been really like, it's something that's hard to follow, and we actually have talked about it with the worship leaders this week.
Yep.
Laz dropped this great comment into the worship oversights or vocals channel, just basically really nicely berating them all for not singing the melody. You know, if there's any worship leaders watching and sound guys, like, sorry for when they've ad-libbed and then stopped singing the melody, but straight up there where Smithy's sort of pulling back a bit and Eliza's really like honing in on that harmony, it just, the song becomes weird to me. It's not like the melody's not the central thing anymore.
for sure.
Yes, Andy.
And I'd encourage a conversation at that point.
Yes.
Like during the rehearsal.
100%. Stop us in our tracks if you're not getting
exactly.
it.
Like we've got comms from the studio to the stage.
Yeah, okay.
If you're just not getting the melody,
Yeah.
and the song's falling apart because of that, like say something, speak up.
Yeah.
It's not that you need to be talking to the right person. It's just that you need to be talking.
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely. Anyone, because we can't. It's the biggest thing that's gonna like people will tune out of if the melody's missing. That's where you lose attention from anyone listening at home.
And
Totally. Yes.
100%.
And that's what people are singing along with.
Absolutely.
They're not trying to sing along with the harmony unless they actively know that they're
There's
doing
an
it.
old
They're trying to
songwriting
sing along
adage
with
that's
the
like
melody.
melody is king, melody is king, melody is king, melody is king. It's always the central thing. And so like if you do nothing else on a mix on a Sunday morning, make whatever's singing the melody just sound awesome.
Yeah.
And if you pull everything else up and it's okay, you'll probably still be like getting comments like that was a great mix because you made the main vocal and the main melody sound good. So
Totally. And just on a quick note, I'll tie this back to a resource, but like melody is not just always vocals.
no.
So in an instrumental break, that's generally, I would say, electric or keys.
Yep.
Pro-
100%.
yeah.
Definitely.
So like, don't be afraid to get them up because that is what is driving the melody and that is what people connect to. I'll just tie it back to
absolutely.
a resource. Andy posted it in Slack when he was spruiking this chat tonight, and it's a resource that Pastor David created. Heads up, honestly, it's a 54-minute video. So Andy said you can kind of get away with 1.25 listen back if you're a little bit short of time. But
Wait, is David listening?
I don't
Listen to it at one speed.
1.5 speed.
I listened to it at one speed, so I listened and intently got as much information as I did out of it. The title of it is What My MD Self is Telling My Audio Engineer Self. And he just goes through and analyzes a track, mutes a bunch of stuff, goes through, separates out the groove, the melody, all of these different parts, some of the effects that the songwriters and producers used to achieve some great effects. Like, it is worth the watch. And he'll get into explaining that groove melody importance, like in such great detail and easy to understand, like language, not just for audio people, but I would encourage MDs especially, but honestly, like every musician it relates to because you all play a part of it. Like,
realistically, every production team member. I'm going to keep on spruiking it in Slack, but like I got stuff out of it as a lighting guy.
Yeah.
You know, like
It should
broad
relate
appeal.
though.
Like totally, exactly.
When
'Cause
he's
we're all-
talking
we're all
about
doing the
technical
same
things
thing.
like effects,
yeah,
he's talking about creating mood. Like you're
absolutely,
creating space around an instrument which actually sets mood and atmosphere.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what like we're doing visually, we're doing with the right like specs on a camera shot, like
That's
the
it.
right width, the right like, you know, it's so much of that all ties back to the same thing. So like whilst the specifics may not be exactly what you're looking for if you're on something that's not audio or music, it's so handy to know.
And that's what I like about what you just said, Blaine, like having that instrument bed really nicely set and then having the melody poke out over the top to be the thing that you follow. Like
absolutely.
it's those two working in tandem.
Yeah, you know, even more so, I'd say like instead of, you know, it being the bed and the melody poking out of the top, I'd say like it's got to be sitting like it's more like nestled in,
Sure.
and that's a better approach. So that's what we want to sort of try and get to tonight. And that again, that video today, if you can't stay with us the whole time, honestly, go back and watch that like 10 minutes or whatever it is video. It's so short for the amount of gold. And that one technique of using that slap delay will just change your life as a audio engineer, just for what it's worth.
Yeah, totally. And also like this video will be posted later to rewatch.
Cool. Well, we'd better not meander then.
Yeah, cool. Let's go.
This we know. This we know. This we know. Yeah. And every enemy will flee as we declare your victory. This we know. This we know.
let's go back here and then just bring that harmony down. Bring Eliza down for me, and let's listen back with it just sitting back. And this is like just showing you how much you can make the change if you're doing sound. So, this is unison. They're both singing melodies. This is distorting when I'm on it. I think from where that's at, it'd be a case of trying to find a way to make that harmony sit. And this is no criticism of Eliza. I'm sure she's not watching tonight, but it's just probably the wrong part, to be honest, or sung the wrong way.
Sure.
And like I say that as being one of her biggest fans. Like I love her vocal, I love her worship leading, but it's just that the context that we're doing here compared to on a normal Sunday, you don't have the whole room spinning with energy from that vocal from Smithy. So as soon as she changes to something else, it draws focus from the melody. I'm not saying don't use harmony, but we just have to be way more selective. And like I guarantee if you listen to the arrangement of this song from Elevation, it's not like harmony and melody competing. It's like melody all the way, and you'll hear a harmony slide in and out. And it's probably just us as vocalists as well having to get a bit cleverer. It's easy for me to say that. I haven't had a Sunday where I've been on yet. That's this Sunday, so D-Day. Then I'm going to eat all my words, I can guarantee you.
Yeah. I think also just a note, it is hard. I have found it a lot more difficult with two vocalists. Like, it is a big change from a normal loaded Sunday with 6. Like, generally you have probably 2 people singing melody. It is so hard to have 2 people, one singing melody, one singing harmony. Like I struggled with Tom and Abby on Sunday morning.
And it is just, it's a change, I think, for the vocalists.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Vocalist hat on now, not guitar or MD or audio. It's something that we have to be way more conscious of. And, that's not on the vocalist either. That's on the whole team. We just should have spoken up probably earlier. And made a point of being like, where's the melody? And I think moving forwards, if we can just be cleverer with our arrangement, it's exactly what I'm saying though. Like if you listen to a recording in a studio, like a studio version of any of these songs, it's not 2 competing melody and harmony. It's going to be melody, and it's one person's performance the whole way through, and the person doing BVs is supporting that. So we probably need to use it a bit more like that. And I mean, a lot of us vocalists probably aren't fit enough to do 3 songs straight, singing melody, if I'm honest, like where we're the only thing under the microscope. All right, let's...
Do you want to try another song?
No, we'll move on to different songs. Probably a little bit too hard to mix that to make it sense.
With me.
So exactly what Locky's saying, the melody at the start in that intro is that piano riff, and that has to be there, like.
What can separate us? You are for me.
And we can kind of hear like that
phasey.
Your love, it won't let go. I know it won't. Come on. The darkness, shadows have no power over me. Fear is empty. Shame has no authority. Your love, it won't let go. I know it won't. For I know that your thoughts, your plans for me are good. And
what is that phasing coming from?
That you hold
is that when there's both?
My future and my hope.
Solo just Eliza?
Your promises never fail. Your promises never fail. We believe it this morning.
Is that on both tracks? The vocal 4 seems like it's got way more level. Okay, so let's just go with Eliza.
Yeah, we stop that.
Yeah.
Give it a
Technical
sec.
difficulties. Cue Locky making changes. So I was just saying, I can hear, like, obviously there's just like this slight time delay, and then the second vocal's causing the main vocal to phase there. I think, like, I mean, while we're there, I think what we'll do next is we'll solo this vocal just to sort of hear making some changes with some effects that might be useful on a Sunday to try and create that ambience without washing it out or losing the vocal. But the intro of that song, that piano riff, it really, like, it's the main melody until there's the main melody. So a guide for any audio guys that are watching really should be at least 75% of what, like, if you've got a level in mind of where you imagine this lead vocal's about to hit and come in for that verse, that's really, like, you should have that piano melody should be sitting there too. And it should be a case of a bit of a, like, you know, these ones, like the pianos just, as the vocal's about to come in, you should be dropping a bit of piano and bringing up in conjunction with each other.
Well, it's a case of following the melody through the song, right?
Correct, yeah. So, and I think that's, like, Locky's point before was a really good way to say it. Just melody is important. So what's the melody at the moment? And this isn't as a guitarist. This is just as a, like, arrangement mind. Pet hate is when we do have a melody that's like a specific rehearsed melody for, like, an instrumental, and we miss the first 2, 3, 4 counts of it because it's like missing the first 4 words of a chorus.
Yeah.
And, like, you go, oh, what did that worship leader say? You know, like, it's like they go, hey, church, this morning, if you just worship with us. And you're like, they said something. I just don't know what it was at the start. I'm sure it was, like, good encouragement.
I think
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest places for us to grow as an audio team. Is, like, knowing the songs back to back.
Yeah,
You know,
true.
It's like,
Yeah.
And I think for me, I historically have not learnt the songs because I haven't been on audio. But now that I'm starting to, you know, really press into it a bit more, like, for me, I'm going to start mapping out my own process of what that song is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I know when I come into service produce and I can give feedback to an audio engineer, like, oh, I was expecting that part there and I didn't hear it.
Yeah, yeah. Or like I was expecting the mix just to go bajunga,
Right,
and it didn't
exactly.
do that. It kind of went.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever the feedback is. But
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think it's not just directly to audio either. I think that if everyone, like, I'm guilty, I do not listen to every song intently before a Sunday. Like, I'm guilty of that. I'll say that. And I'm trying to be better at that. But if we all know the song, like, us as audio guys, this whole thing of pointing out whether or not we're missing the melody, if we don't know that there should be a melody being sung there, it's very hard for us to translate that and tell that to someone.
Yeah.
And it's like you still also like on the nice side of that stick, you won't get it right all the time, because also, like, there will be occasions where it's like, hang on a sec, they said they were going to do 2 choruses in this rehearsal. On the fly, the worship leader's gone, no, I want to go straight to the bridge here, and you do miss that instrumental. That's way different to, I went 3 verses before I realised there's a guitar part, you know, so, yeah. All right, cool.
I don't know if...
Okay,
looking
give it a
at
shot.
this now-
It's got some timing issues now.
Yeah. That's...
Edit, undo.
Yeah.
Undo clip slide.
It's...
How many did you do? Undo. Undo. Undo.
What the issue will be is now. All right. I've really gone and cooked it now.
Hold on, I got a slide for this.
Okay. Oh, no. Here we go.
Bam.
Oh, no. We got problems, son. Just Command Z.
How many?
Oh, a few. So what it seemed like, keep going if you can, and again, and, oh,
That looks like it's all back together.
yeah.
Ish.
It seemed like there was... Hey, Andy, just a question. Would this have been the first time Eliza used the
You
KSM?
are with
No,
me.
that was only
No,
What can separate
There's
us?
just
it would have been the week after, I think.
so much
For
more.
me, stand against us?
What's the ambience from? What's the ambience from on that? Like that phasing happening from which is that the other vocal?
Yeah, that's that track that we have for vocal 4. So maybe we had the wrong multi-track that got recorded because that sounds.
What's this?
With me, what can separate us?
Dave made a good point. Is there an MC mic?
Me, what can stand against
There is an MC mic, but
us?
it's
Your love, it
turned on.
won't let go. I know it won't. Come on.
That's with it muted.
Shadows
It's just with the two main
have no
vocals up.
power
That's all right. Let's just
over
go with
me.
this one.
Yeah, cool.
Fear is
For the sake of what we're doing, let's just use this vocal here.
shame has.
So let's go back to the start.
Yeah.
And
Thank you, Lord. You're with us, God.
look, you've got a good whack of drums there. We've talked about that. You know, I'm still keen to like do
Sing, you
further
are
work
with
there and
me.
see if we can find something that works for everyone. But you will struggle to
You
get rid of
are
drums because they're right in
with
front.
me, what can separate us? You are for me.
Right, so let's just
What
have a look
can
at maybe some
stand
vocal processing
against
here. So I think what's on there at the moment, Locky, on that vocal?
Okay, so we got relatively flat EQ, just high
Yep, so
pass
just
at
getting rid of
100
some-
at -12
Yep.
per octave. And then on premium we have I bypassed the dynamic EQ just because I do not know, like we didn't get a chance to set it up, so I don't want it to be compressing the wrong.
Yeah, wrong range
frequencies.
of frequency. Okay, yeah, that's fine.
And then there is a vocal bus on there, which
Yep,
is the Yamaha
compressor.
bus comp.
Okay, so that's on the vocal bus.
Vocal bus,
Yep.
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
There is nothing. The only thing. What's that?
Tape. So is that saturation? Saturation being
Yeah. So David has a open deck tape on there.
which I'm sure once the stream catches up, he'll comment on. I'd say that's again, yeah, it's just a bit of saturation, which is, I guess, trying to add more harmonic content, so information that's not there. So I guess, okay, if that's the case, this is probably a good time. Let's go and let's add a delay in, and let's
Sure.
on a delay bus though.
Yep. That's already set up.
Yeah. So can we'll just show the difference with like, so use a slap. Is there a slap there that he set up? There is a. Pretty sure it was in that. It's one of the stereo delays. It'll be either or. It'll be short, and one will be like under 100 milliseconds, and the other one will be.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
That's
Okay.
it.
So I'll just play this vocal, and we'll just have a play with this. So this is trying to show what this video was that I threw into the chat with Savo.
Sing, you are with me. You are with me. What can separate us? You are for me. What can stand against us? Your love, it won't let go. I know it won't. Come on. The darkness,
What is
shadows
that bass note?
have no power over me. Fear is empty. Shame has no authority. Your love, it won't let go. I know it won't.
Hold that thought. Locky's trying to find what's being sent to it.
Haha.
Got it?
Yeah.
Go. I know it won't. For I know that your thoughts, your
So if we go
plans
like
for
with this
me
one,
are
so
good, and I know.
with the slap delay, we don't want it to be tempo set
Yeah.
per se. We want it to be fixed.
Yeah.
So and it is. If you have a look at, you probably can't really see it on that screen because of the colors. We've got the left side's at 70 milliseconds and the right side's at 120. They aren't necessarily set in relation to the BPM of the song. The idea of this delay is to take place of trying to make a vocal have some space with reverb, because reverb can get really washy really quickly and obscure the vocal.
Yep.
A good guide, and this includes EQ for the most part, is that any effect that you add is decreasing intelligibility of the source. So whilst we can try and enhance the source, ultimately the more effects you add, compression, EQ, like dynamic EQs, reverbs, delays, any of that stuff, chorus, is always going to be decreasing intelligibility. So just having a dry vocal that's not offensively got this proximity effect thing, just a bit more space like this will always be the sort of most effective, but sometimes it just creatively feels a bit dull and dry.
Sure.
So with this sort of setting, what we're trying to do is give it some space and make it a bit more 3D. So the idea is that you'll have left at a speed, right at a speed, no repeats. So, you know, it's not like it's going delay, 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 delay. It's just literally the did it. So it's a slap delay, like, and so it's gonna give you space in the mix, because you're not gonna have it really high up. It's gonna give you space on the vocal. So the main vocal is gonna still have its main track coming through dry, and you're gonna bring up that little bit of that delay underneath.
Yep.
And it creates a bit more of a 3D sort of characteristic to the vocal, which is what we're trying to do. Instead of having this, like my vocal sounds right now, that direct, you know, no ambience, no nothing, dry proximity kind of thing, it's going to have a lot more space around it and feel a bit more like, oh, it's here, but they haven't got this delay thing on it.
Sure.
Yeah, so we'll like play it and we'll pull it up to the point where like we can hear it really obviously, and then bring it back and try and make it sit a bit better.
Do we want the band down for this? Just
initially, just to show it,
Sure.
and then we'll do the same exercise again, because anytime you're adding effects, my take is, unless you're really trying to like fix something that was really offensive, like a really bad room resonance on a vocal or on a source, or something of that nature, you really want to change the effect in the context of the mix where possible. So don't put headphones on, don't any of that stuff. You don't need to do that for the most part, unless you're really trying to hone in on something.
Go, I know it won't, for I know that your thoughts, your plans for me are good.
Okay, so bring it all the way off.
Go, I know it won't, for I know that your
So that kind of
thoughts,
sound is what I've heard
your
on
plans
a lot of
for me
Sundays.
are good, and I know
It just feels very direct. So
that
then when
you
it comes out of
hold
a TV speaker or a sound bar and a sub that's really not dialed in for anything, you're just hearing this like really direct vocal of like quite a good vocalist sounding fairly shabby. And I think part of that is that it doesn't have the resonance that our ears psychoacoustically are used to interpreting a singer through.
Yep.
Yeah.
go, I know it won't, for I know
Bit more.
your thoughts, your plans for me are good.
So
and I
about there, yeah, is
know
where it seems to
that
sit
you
like.
hold
It sounds
my
like she's in a
future
room where she's
in my
singing and there's a
heart.
PA throwing her voice and it's coming back off the back wall. Like there's that slap of like, you hear it in our auditorium, like anyone that's ever walked in early and clapped, you hear it go. That's not ideal either, but the concept is there. So what we'll do is we'll do it with music. We'll just bring a vocal up to a level you're comfortable.
Sure.
Or actually maybe a touch too much.
Sure.
And then we'll bring up that delay until a vocal starts to sort of sit back in the mix again.
Yep.
Go, I know it won't, for I know that your thoughts, your plans for me are good, and I know that you hold my future and my hope, and your promises never fail, your promises never fail.
Yeah, and you can hear, like, sorry, my send here is a bit distorted, so I'm getting a bit of dirt. But you hear that, like, all of a sudden, you're hearing her a little bit out wide as well, and it's not so, like, here, which is often, I think, has been our problem, is, like, the vocals, like, felt like this. If we were looking at a mix, it's, like, right up in your face and too much in your face.
Yeah.
It's great for the vocal to be the main thing, but if it's too pokey, it just gets a bit like, oh, can this person sing? Or
Yeah, that's right. I think in a counter argument to that, I think it is important for the vocal to be there, but we don't want it punching through, traveling way in front of the band.
Absolutely.
Like,
I want it to be front and center,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
want it to then be front and center and supported with the van, like I was saying,
Yeah,
band, like I was
but
saying
like
before. Instead of
that's-
punching over the top, you want it to
Yeah.
be really sitting, nestled in, and the first, occasionally you're hearing it here,
Yeah.
not occasionally hearing it here,
Totally.
and this sort of dynamic range thing that's happening. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
So I guess, that sort of really is something better to be explored, I think, in that YouTube video, because that will be the most useful thing. And
Okay,
I'm happy
great.
to throw it in the whole team thing, or Andy can figure out where it should go best.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, it explains it in such a simple way that makes great sense. He's talking about in like, I think he's in Logic or Pro Tools, one over,
Sure.
he goes backwards and forwards. But it absolutely applies for live.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually a more effective way to do it live as well.
Yeah.
So like we can carry this change on to when we're back in the auditorium.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Is there anything that you sort of specifically want to touch on, like vocally, anything that you sort of have played with and have you?
I think I played around a lot with on Sunday morning the reverb.
Yeah.
And I personally wasn't 100% happy.
What
but
was it you didn't like?
I still felt like you'll hear it once you're in here mixing, or if you're listening at home, the reverb just takes over everything. Like it just reverberates over the whole mix, even though you're literally only sending Vox Verb. Like it just really spaces out. It feels like it's encompassing the whole mix, and so I tried to hone that in a little bit. I forget what I ended up with. I think so. Blaine suggested a plate. And I put it in, played around with it a bit, and I didn't love it in the end. So I ended up using a hall.
Which is I think where Dave did Dave end up on a hall as well? Oh, chamber. Okay, there you go, vocal chamber.
Vocal chamber on a stage. The reverb type there. So plate, stage. So it looks, yeah. Okay, sorry, maybe I was a stage. Hall's all the way at the other spectrum. Yeah, okay, I would have ended up on, I think, what I used.
Okay, so let's just have a listen to those maybe. Hey, let's
Sure.
let's bring the vocal up and have it at a fairly high mix, and let's actually hear the difference of those algorithms and how much difference it makes. I think the comment that, everything sounds like it's getting washed out by it, well, in reality, the main two things, bar the counter melody stuff, are going to be drums and vocals.
Sure.
And you are getting drums through the vocal, and it is getting washed out by the vocals. So
That's very true,
Yeah.
yeah. Do we want the slap still up?
Healing
bring the
and
band down a little
freedom
bit.
as you speak
yeah, the slap. Let's just get rid of it for now.
over me.
Sure.
Faith is breaking all impossibility. Your name has overcome. Your name alone.
Is that clipping elsewhere as well? Eliza's vocal. I'm just getting lots of grind on it when it's
Yeah,
at the
it
top.
was clipping.
Yeah.
Digital gain's pretty cranky.
Cool. Soz.
Cool. No.
Healing and freedom as you speak faith.
Go even a little bit more, just to over-exaggerate it.
Faith is breaking.
Okay, now go back and let's just go through the different algorithms.
Your name has overcome. Your name alone.
So that's on the room setting.
Yeah.
Your thoughts,
That's
your
all.
plans for me are good.
So it's obviously it's darker.
That you hold
It's got a longer pre-delay, like the time before the reverb starts. I think what I'm experiencing here, and this is something that I said, I think I wrote a few comments on the mixed comp. I don't know if, because you judged it first before coming back, I don't know if you saw much of my comments, but there was a few where I was like, this feels like it's in a basketball like gymnasium or something. It feels like it's got like hardwood floor, hard walls, no one in there, no chairs, no nothing. And it's like this, it's not even swimmy. It's like in like a big concert hall where it's like this warm, like developing reverb. It's like this pew, 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 pew kind of reverb. And I think it really does exactly what you say. It obscures everything, or it washes out the whole mix.
That's it, yeah.
And I think that's where like, do we need that on a drum kit? Do we need that on the guitar or the keys or whatever in the context of a a stream mix is something that we need to be asking ourselves for
Yeah.
every source.
Totally, yeah. And
Delay on the on the vocal,
Yeah.
100%. It needs ambience. It can't be direct like this.
Yeah.
Drums, maybe because we've got overheads, we can get away with it.
yeah,
or-
I found myself using less kit verb.
Than
That's,
not-
that
yeah.
was just the point that I was going to say. Like,
Oh, cool.
yeah, I've found myself using a little bit less because it just starts washing out, and having all that reverb in there's just it starts washing it out, and it's really hard to control. I've found.
And it's different when it is in a studio. But Ryan
Yeah.
Casey posted some of the stuff he's been doing with at work, like for the
Sure.
army band.
Yep.
And there was like a really big, like over the top because of the song, like snare verb.
Yep.
But it sounded really good because it was an effect. It wasn't just washing over the source.
Yeah, yeah.
Really intentionally using that stuff can be so cool and can make your mix have that kind of X factor without it being all about what you're doing back here.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so yeah, I would say so in terms of a lead vocal, what I think we should be processing is I mean, if you watch that video, the other one, which was mixing Carrie Underwood's vocal with, one of the greatest mix engineers of all time. Again, a short video and well worth watching if you just want some insight into how the pros do it. He talks about he EQs into compression, and he does that because he wants to go as bright as what he wants on the EQ, and then have the compression sort of tame it just a bit.
Sure.
And you'll find that he's doing exactly what you see most people doing with like a pop vocal, especially, or like country vocals.
Yeah.
They're not getting a compressor and dialing it up to the point where the vocal gets squashed, and instead of having these big peaks, it's like, and the vocals all sound the same the whole way through, and it's always this level all the way from start to finish.
Yeah.
It's got space to breathe, and they'll be adding one compressor that's knocking off a little bit of the peaks, and then a second compressor that's knocking off a little bit more, and then it'll still go into the vocal bus as well.
That's right.
So obviously we're limited with what we can do overall, and we have ways around that, workarounds, and Dave's sort of tried, I think, to add layers of compression. But I would encourage you, if you can find a way in your workflow or using the template that Dave sort of set up, you don't use a heavy compressor ever. Don't be heavy-handed on compression. It's just not needed.
For sure.
Use it again for a reason where you're like, that thing's just jumping out at me. Knock a bit off, and then find where it's routed through and how it's being sent out, and then maybe knock a little bit more off on that next level. Is a more effective way, I think, to use compression. So, I mean, I'll try and find a video that's all about compression as well to throw in there that's a bit more succinct than us rambling.
Sure. And I feel like, and I'm guilty of it too, like, the use of parallel compression is underused by us, I think.
Well, and I would say series as well.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I know Andy.
Sorry, yes.
What's his face? Andy
Crawford
that did that thing. Like, great use of parallel compression, like on the drums especially, and making them like kind of really pop.
Yeah.
And brighten up without being overbearing.
Sure.
But as well, like, and I've probably like gone a bit too hard at Dave Lewis on this, but like, he's like, and then I'm going to like parallel compress it. I'm like, that's awesome if it works, but like, just make sure that you're really happy with the result, because parallel compression, in my opinion, and this is probably something that I've like just taken on from watching other people that are like masters at it. They're often, you'll hear this same theme from different professional mix engineers, is that parallel compression works really well if it works really well.
Sure.
And some songs, it sucks, and it's the worst option to use. So whereas you'll find that there'll always at least be, prior to that parallel compression track, you'll find that there'll always be series compressors used. So like, EQ into a compressor that's light into another compressor that's light into a tonal compressor, where it's like something that's a slower attack and just shaping the sound a little bit more. But sorry. So underused in your mixes, you mean?
I feel like that there is so much more that can be added, and I know David, and I've honestly seen Trevor use it quite a bit.
Cool.
Like, just having on our like kick DCA and snare DCA and stuff, having those parallel channels there ready to bring up and mix easily. So I think that's on the beta scene in here, and it's definitely on this broadcast mix scene. So if you ever come in and do a mix, like, I would recommend, just as a little side note as well, start with the scene that is here. Don't necessarily use like David's scene, but use the most recent Nexus Online. I think that's what it's called. Scene.
Okay, cool. That's a good note because I'm not doing any of this. So
totally. So
that
like
stuff's handy.
because all the patching's done, there's a really good starting point for us to achieve a good mix for broadcast with this. And that's not saying that we rock up, load that scene, pull the faders up, and be like, yeah, man,
not
this is
at
so
all.
good. Like every vocalist is different. You need to work hard on. Honestly, like vocals is where I've spent the most time in that studio EQing
And
and
so you should.
working on.
That's
for
the truth.
the broadcast even more so than usually out there, because it is so much easier to get away with it out there, especially with a loaded vocal team. I feel like you can kind of
Hide a bit more.
totally, yeah.
Yeah, and look, I mean, to exactly the same thing again. Go like in terms of a vocal chain, get the gain right.
Yep.
EQ in a surgical fashion. So listen to it first. Don't look at the spectrum analyzer. Turn it off is my advice. But if you really need it, turn it on. But turn it off while you're first having a listen to your main two vocals in this context, because you've only got two you have to do. And just find the things that are those really over-the-top resonances and a fairly tight but not like super tight cue, like maybe 5 or 6, and pull out around that frequency that you're unhappy with. Only pull out like 3 or 4 dB. Don't go crazy on it because it just adds all sorts of phase issues. And then once you like happy enough, I know Dave was saying this afternoon he finds with some guitars and stuff where he's like, oh, I want to get rid of that and I want to get rid of that, and then he's like, this guitar sounds crap, because he's just been hacking at it and trying to get rid of stuff that he wasn't happy with. But once the mix was up, it probably wouldn't have bugged him as much.
Totally.
So EQ those really offensive things out of the vocal, and then stop there with your EQ, and then wait till there's a mix, and then EQ in the mix is like the best advice I can give from like the hours and hours that it took me to get my head around all the stuff I was learning.
That's something I've noticed. Depending on, I guess it depends on the engineer at certain times as well. Like running a sound check, I've noticed that tends to be a time when people try and get their EQ dialed.
It'll never be right.
So vocals take like 15 minutes because we seem to be just waiting on the engineer to get something right.
Yeah.
Turns out what they were doing was EQing.
Don't get me wrong. If it's really bad,
totally.
You pull a fader up and you're like, these 4 suck. Well, you got to just spend some time,
100%.
but
don't
do your main EQ.
Doing that secondary EQ like after the fact, do that mid mix.
And you know what? That's probably how I was taught when I learned how to do sound. I was taught to do that, and it's just a bad idea. And whoever taught me to do that was just, and it's so old school and it's so outdated, and I don't think it actually applies anymore because, someone made the point that when you're EQing, it used to be that you don't boost frequencies too much because there was such a noise floor. We just don't have that issue anymore. So you should get rid of the things that are bad first, and then after that, it should all be about tonal EQ. It should be about sweetening it or making it a bit thicker or a little bit thinner or getting rid of some resonance, like low end stuff if it's still a bit too rumbly. It should be about like macro.
And all of that's in context of your entire mix.
And correct, because you might be like, this is way too dull. And then you pull it up, and with everything else, you're like, oh, no, it's actually not too dull. Like I thought it wasn't going to come out, but it's sitting fine. Or it might be the opposite, where you're like, oh, I got to get rid of all that stuff. It's all really like, woo, 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 woo. And then you get rid of it, and then you pull it up, and you're like, gee, that vocal's really thin. You're like, yeah, because you spent 10 minutes EQing it, not having any idea of its context. So, yeah, 100%, man. Like, set the gain, do your surgical EQ, get rid of stuff that's just really gnarly, but then don't be too fastidious at that stage. Move on to your first compressor. Just get it so that, because by this stage, they should be actually running a rehearsal. And when they're getting to those choruses where it's like a double chorus, that's the time to set your compression. Don't set it in the verses. Don't set it when it's like they're low. Set it when they're like really belting. Because this is where we get these like really pumping kind of compressors that like affect the groove of the song and really squash the dynamics. Is because it's been set way too like clamping down on stuff, and it's still music. It should have ebbs and flows. So
totally.
Yeah, set that compressor, and then if you have the option, like, once you're there, sort of set another compressor as well. And then even if you want like EQ on that bus as well, like EQ on that vocal group, and that's where you can be like, okay, like I've already done my first EQ and I've got rid of stuff and I've done the compression, so it's sort of sitting a bit more, and now just like that vocal still feels like it could just be a touch brighter. It needs a little bit more lift, a bit more air. Well, do that there, and then you can sort of be adding your effects in to make it sit like resonance-wise where it should. Yeah, it's about finding a structure, and I think we probably need to nail down something over time that just works for us all, and do it, because again, the biggest thing that like through mix training, like and trying to learn and upskill myself from the really shoddy place I was like people keep banging on about have a process, do the same thing every time, but make sure it's a good process before you bed it down.
I think another good tip that I find, which some of you probably do, I find myself doing it a lot. It's important. You don't have as much time in live as you do in studio, but bypass it. And like David actually like told me a good tip. Like he'll close his eyes, spam that button, bypass, so he doesn't know where he is, and then hit it a couple of times, find out which one he likes. If you end up on the one that you like the most is bypassed, honestly, hit that flat button, reset it, start again, because you're it's not right.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. And again, this comes back to the like listen first, change second. So don't be like, oh, I can see on the spectrum analyzer that this kick drum's got a lot of 100 hertz. Duh, it's a kick drum. So like when you go, oh, it's got too much 100 hertz, I'll pull it out. It's like, it's meant to. That's what the instrument is. Like, and it can really trick you. So like, have your mix going and then listen for the things that are really bugging you. Once it's going, once the mix is there, you'll know. You'll be like, that guitar sounds gnarly. Let's just fix it. And it might be a case of like I played with the EQ, I did the bypass thing, which I do that too. And then I'm like, it just still sounds bad. It sounds bad when I've EQ'd it. It sounds bad when it's flat. Okay, stop the rehearsal. Let's just have a quick look at these guitars, MD or worship leader or whoever. Can you just have a chat? Can you guys figure it out? Does that sound good in your ears? Is it good out there for the monitors engineer? Yes. Oh, okay. Well, what am I doing? What's wrong with my processing in here? Like,
All right. Let's just have a quick 5-minute break.
Cool.
We've been going for about an hour, so let's just have a quick 5, and we'll be back soon.
Cool.
welcome back to the viewers.
Welcome.
Oh, hang on, I lost my headphone.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And
All right, so here we go. He's got him.
What a pro.
So Locky just asked the question in the break. Oh, did you want to go, Andy?
Oh yeah. So just a heads up, we're gonna finish off that vocal processing chain, and then probably call it a night. But after we do that chain, just drop in some questions now, and we might see if we can get to some just thoughts around those. If you've got anything, drop it in, and I'll hit them up later on. Yeah.
Comment below, guys. No.
Slap subscribe. No,
Ring that bell.
Sorry, Pai, what did I ask?
Yeah, no, I don't know. Something about ringing the bell and subscribing.
Okay.
You said, do we feel like that slap delay only is is that delay covered? And I said, actually, I don't think so at all. I think the slap delay should be on every main vocal that we do from now on to give it that 3D-ness to it.
Yep.
But it shouldn't be particularly audible.
The delay.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be actually enough that you can hear it. Like with headphones in, you should still only just perceive a little bit of that width.
Yep.
That's the point of it, and it's to create it so it doesn't feel so direct. And then from there, the creative use of delay, or what I would say is like a timed delay, is where you are like tapping still in that delay for the song. If you wanted to use a dotted eighth, if you're using like a longer like eighth note or quarter note delay. And I use the example to you, which to me is what makes sense as a guitarist as well, of like, if you're playing like chords in a chorus, occasionally there might be a song that has like a delay kind of bit written into those chords, but not really. And usually, if anything, it just gets a bit messy and doesn't make any sense. Whereas when you've got like an open bridge where you're strumming something, or it's like, a rhythmic part, that delay actually can create a bit of like an interest factor musically.
For sure,
and I think we can do the same thing on a vocal in a bridge where it's like a bit more open and epic. Adding that delay actually makes a really creative use of it, not just, oh yeah, I have a vocal delay on that I leave on all the time, and when you're listening on headphones it sounds really weird and panny the whole way through the song, which has happened some weeks because we're just a bit too rushed for time, I think.
Totally, yeah. And I think just straight out the back, I don't know, disagree with me if you want, but I think a stereo delay is so much more useful in broadcast than it is with mono. Out in our room, I think it is hard to get a full stereo image because of the way that it's arrayed. And so I know some people opt for a mono delay with that because it just delivers that delay.
Yeah, it's all consistent for each listener,
For sure. But I think in broadcast, almost every device that the congregation will be listening on will have stereo speakers. Like even laptops have stereo, like iPhones these days have stereo speakers. Like it is worthwhile using that full stereo field to our best advantage. And like that's a conversation for another day. And it comes back like we encountered a lot in the mixed comp of Victory, like people not using that full stereo image.
Yeah, and it felt very like,
everything. And then like we have someone that comes in, and I think Andrew Gibson probably did it the best. He panned, like we had like an electric in the left and keys in the right,
and even there was also movement throughout as well, and like not that you should be sitting there like with the pan knobs all the way through a broadcast mix, but
it's
to use it actually is really effective. Like
don't be afraid of it. And like the thing is, we're listening and with good stereo speakers in that studio, and like so long as you're sitting in the right point, I think Mick touched on it in the audio channel a little bit the other week, just finding that space. And just another quick tangent, sorry, like when you go into the studio, have a song that you listen to, whether it be a worship track or something that the intricate parts to, how the bass sounds, how the keys sound, the vocals, everything. Play it through these speakers and listen to where it goes in that room, and because it like differs quite a fair bit from if you plant yourself back in that couch, it is sub valley, like. And then I think I've found that sort of sitting
right at the front of the couch or standing, that's what Mick had said too.
I find with the chair that's in there at the moment, if you sort of lean back a little bit on it and get your head as if you were sitting straight on that edge of the couch.
Yep.
That's sort of same.
Most effective, frequency balance. We are going to try and sort that out in the future once we get back out into the real auditorium and we can actually reclaim that space. But
yeah, that's right.
For now, deal with it.
Totally. So straight out of the bat, if you'd normally use a mono, don't.
Yeah, agreed.
Stereo set in this broadcast one anyway, so
love it.
Don't change it.
Perfect.
Another good tip that I found is, I don't know if you can see, kinda, you can see the knobs are in a different position, but offset it. So put a different note in, and that gives you as it's delaying, it's using that stereo image instantly for you, because it's coming through left. In this case, later, it's coming down the right-hand side first before the left. And I find that in a delay, and it's only tiny, right? Only take it by like a quarter beat or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
so it's just as well, like, I mean, I can see there that's got like dotted on one side and straight on the other, which will automatically go to that like vibe. So if the song's going da, 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 you automatically get a bit more movement, and that'll be panned across. So it's going like ba 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 ba. So it's like you're getting like movement, which creates stereo field and interest factor anyway. So
totally. So
good tip.
Play around with that though. Like, have a listen to them both on that like straight crotchet and see if you like it, and if not, come back to that like dotted quaver and see, and you will hear it. Like, honestly, like the beautiful thing about this is just do it. Like, it's not like if we're out in the auditorium, no one else is listening to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
there's not even
during
people
rehearsal.
walking in and out, making coffee and whatever.
That's it. Like, go crazy. Like, that's the thing. That use your DCAs, mute up when you can. Like, have a listen and just play. Like,
or do it prior to that with your talk back and route it into a thing and route it through the speakers and figure out what it does yourself. Do it on another day if you want.
Yeah. But yeah, play around with that. I think definitely. So that's what David's done here. He's got it set to a crotch and dotted quaver. Sync. Make sure that's on. That sync on just means that you can tap it.
Listen to Locky coming out with all those musical terms.
I used to play
Crotchet, dotted quaver. It ain't no thing. Hit that bell. All right, cool. Maybe we'll just we'll play something and have a play with
let's
that
have
delay.
a play, yeah.
I'm standing on every promise that you made. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. Jesus, I will trust every word I hear you say. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. Yes, I am standing on every promise that you made. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. And Jesus, I will trust every word I hear you say.
And this is
I
probably
will
realistically of any point of what the audio guys are doing is the most of like a your own unique stamp you can put on this.
Yep.
Obviously, I say that with hesitation because really the mix you pull is the most unique stamp that you could possibly have. But
Totally.
if there's a point that's just like creativity for the sake of it and nothing else, it's not just trying to deliver the mix. Your delay settings are really that.
Yeah.
And there's so much you can do. So if you don't like it like that with the two notes, just change it. Just make it a crotchet. Make it a, you know, and there's plenty of stuff. Play with it on what thing, you know. Put it on if there's a piano line somewhere that's like a right hand octave that's like a bit more chimey sounding, like use that. If there's a guitar that sounds like it needs it, same with verb, like, you know, throw some on for a section and then pull it out again.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like ride that fader, like honestly, like
Yeah.
have fun with it, find where you want it to sit.
But be ready to rip it out as soon as possible. Same as on the
Totally.
vocals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
standing on every promise that you made. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. Jesus, I will trust.
and another tip, like just don't set your delay like this, because like that sounds off. So make sure you have that band as you're setting
yeah,
the
this is
delay.
exactly. This is the groove.
Yeah.
And that'll come back to that video that you're talking about of that Dave did. That, yeah. I'll say, like, I guess, like, some of the mixes that I've heard have been, and I'm not trying to be critical, I'm just trying to, like, give feedback that we can actually use here, has had a little bit of that where we weren't using that slap delay technique to have the vocal. So we did have reverb on it to try and achieve what I think works a lot better with the slap delay.
Yep.
And the reverb was making it a bit more swimmy already. Fine, like that was what we were using. And then we're like, I don't want it to be so like swimmy in reverb. I'll pull the reverb back a bit and I'll try and use a delay because I know a delay doesn't have the same effect as like standing across a crowded room. It's like just two lots of the source. So it's like it's giving a bit of ambience. And so we had the idea right, but we were using it wrong. And so like in the end, we ended up with this like sounding like this where the band is not here. The band is like, and you're hearing this sort of mix. And I'm at home going, what's that delay? Like, it doesn't make sense for the visual. And I think that's the other thing that we do have to like keep in mind is like, what's the visual? Like, the visual is a tighter shot on a smaller stage, and we've got this like delay, like we're in Suncorp Stadium.
Yeah.
Like, it's so incongruent, and it just made like it was messing with my head. I'm like, it's a delay. I don't know why it's a delay, but it's a delay.
You know, the thing that pops into my head then is like watching Foley artists at work.
Yeah.
This feels the setup that we have here with the live TriCaster out to a big flat screen, like that feels like a Foley artist setup to me, where it's like you're watching and you're mixing the thing that you're watching, and like you're making the sound of the thing that's on the screen. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like,
And
rather
to be
than
fair,
playing to a whole room.
Exactly. And we haven't banged on enough about that. And so everyone, poor audio guys in here, trying to just get a broadcast mix together with no kind of really helpful, not none, but little outside, because people are like, just let them do it. Like, let them just get through a Sunday. And then, like, honestly, I think like Locky got close Sunday morning, and Sunday night vocally, I think that's the best representation of our room psychoacoustically that's translated through speakers. So I only, again, had my iPhone headphones, because I was trying to go like trashy. And I'm like, that sounds great. Like, that vocal to me sounds like me walking into the auditorium on a Sunday morning back in the old days.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, awesome. So now,
like 5 weeks ago.
correct. Yeah. And I think Dave was using the slap delay for the first time as like an effective technique, and it works really well. So like, I think the one other thing that I wanted to say on that Chris Lord Alge video of him mixing Carrie Underwood, like, awesome vocalist, totally different setting. I get that. But what he does, and again, what I've seen in a lot of other people, including those Musician on a Mission guys, like the channel that I've been sharing, is they wind up like EQ in the mix and EQ to the point where you're like, okay, I can definitely hear what that's doing 100%. Doesn't have to be right up at full. That's just a misuse of it.
Yeah.
But in the context of the mix, with everything up, wind up the EQ thing that you think you want more of until you can hear it. And you'll know straight away, do I want more of that? Yeah, okay, I do. And then pull it right back to almost zero and just pull in a little bit of it.
Yeah.
I think everything, it's like seasoning food. It's got to be a little bit of salt. If you're like throwing heaps of salt in when you first start, and salt and salt and salt all the way through the mix, you eat that food and you're like, bleh, I hate this. It doesn't feel like food. It's just salty. And I think sometimes if we're like, get too focused on this stuff, it's great to talk about it tonight, but if we get too focused on it and overcook it, everything just ends up being like, well, that mix was just salty.
Sure.
Yeah. Hopefully
Cool.
that analogy translates for people that don't cook.
Yeah. All right, that's kind of effects. We'll come back. We'll just quickly jump in and have a play with this compressor that's
And,
over the vocal bus.
Like, is there anything, Andy, like anything that anyone sort of wanted some clarification or wanted to like have a bit more of a quick chat about? I don't want to hold everyone up all night.
Yeah.
I think probably the question that sticks out initially is Andrew Gibson's latest question. Like, what are your thoughts on using a little chorus to help smooth over the pitchy harmonies?
Yeah.
Yep.
Love it. Again, most this is as a like vocal tuning hater and auto tune hater, but unfortunately our ears have become so used to it
Yeah.
that you hear an imperfect vocal from imperfect anatomy as it should be, and you're like, oh, that vocal's a bit off.
And even not tuned, like sampled, right? Like,
Well, I mean, I guess like so
Sampled and stitched,
every broadcast from every major church uses auto tune in their door that their vocal channel's running through, so they use it live.
Yeah.
And it's just because it's super distracting when a vocal's pitchy, like so distracting, and like it's fine if it's a note here and there.
Yeah.
But when it's just they're having a pitchy morning, and so that's why they do it. And chorus can definitely be used to that effect. Like, and I think it's about finding an effect that works and like take note of it and lock it down and use it, especially with that one vocalist all the time. So like you might find that having it on a certain combination of vocals or a certain group of vocals works really well where it doesn't on others.
Yep.
I love like in terms of like an aggressive like rock vocal, Chester, R.I.P. From Linkin Park.
yeah.
And his vocal processing, like the stuff they did there was actually really complex, but they still did it live as well. And they did effectively use like chorus, saturation, like some like drive, as well as like a nice clean vocal, great compression, great reverb, like all the standard stuff. But
Yeah.
it's finding a sound, I think, that works. And if Andrew's got a great tip there, like that's the sort of stuff we should be talking about. Like let's use that to what you said before. I think you're like, sometimes our mixes have felt really separate, and it's trying to find what are the things that will help glue those parts together. You want separation is awesome because you want to be able to make out the different instruments, but
Totally.
if they're too separate, it just sounds like a bunch of individuals. We want cohesion still.
Yeah.
So it's about finding things that will help create what's often referred to as mixed glue, and things like chorus can definitely do that if there's a bit of pitch variation, because it will be like, well, now everyone's a bit pitchy.
Yeah, and to me, it's
Intentionally.
probably everything in moderation, right? Like it's
absolutely.
finding the balance that between all of those effects,
Yeah.
like stacking them up in such a way that the whole thing feels balanced.
Absolutely,
That's
you
it,
smash
yeah.
a chorus on the whole vocal group, and in too much, and if it's too much, it's too much. Like it just sounds like a trippy 70s like
Yeah.
psychedelic vocal like kind of thing, and add a tape delay, and hey presto, there we are. Like
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's one of those things as well. Like we are limited to our time during rehearsals, so
Yeah.
if
but
you're
we
able
do
to,
have a
Totally.
digital console, so
that's it. Yeah.
utilize it
Yeah.
when you can.
Play around with it. Like I'm confident that there will be, once you are comfortable with broadcast mixing, because like the first week it is tough. Like you are battling with yourself the whole rehearsal to try, and you're trying new things. You're trying to make it sound like it used to out in the room, and it is so hard. And I still am like, I'm still pushing myself. And even Sunday morning, like I'm still I was happy with the instruments. I was like, that was good. I felt that I did a good job with that.
Yeah, definitely.
And then vocals was just like, there will be something. So once you're comfortable in this, it is a new setting. Like being in the studio control room, mixing on monitors, like it
so
is
different.
new. So once you're comfortable with that, have a play. Like there are 8 effects mounts to play around with. It looks like David is using almost all of his. But that's cool. Guess what? You don't have to. Yeah. So he's got like 2 on a vocal, 2 vocals that we're not using. So like play around with it and take your scene away with you. It's kind of hard with CL Editor. You can play around, but you can't really get audio
Yeah.
into it.
I think the other thing in that same that Andrew asked, the same like idea of like bringing them like tying them a bit more together for
Yep.
pitch. Yeah, sure, chorus might be a good thing to experiment with and for us to try on the vocal bus. I guess it would probably be more effective where we have BVs and a lead vocal, I think, and just running on BVs and leaving the lead vocal a bit unaffected. But as well, saturation being the other thing is that probably is where I think Dave is using some tape emulation to do that same thing, where what the tape spits out, in the old days was a little bit less hi-fi, so it automatically adds a tape saturation, which is just a bit more of a grittiness to sort of make it less direct like this and a bit more harmonic content. So same thing could be done with a bit more gain on like a drivey, kind of like an overdrive style plugin, but like a small amount mixed in parallel. Chorus again might do a similar thing as an effect if it's mild as well. Yeah.
Anything else, Andy? Or
good suggestion though.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and like, go for it, Andrew. I'm so keen to get you behind the desk and see some of the magic that you're able to pull, and everyone else. Like, have a play. These level up together things are for us to improve as a team. Like,
collectively.
Totally. Like, let's all give chorus a go if we have time. Like, that's a great suggestion. Have a play. If you don't like it, cool. Guess what? We're individuals. We're able to be creative individually and have our own sounds. That's the whole thing what Blaine was saying. Like,
and I think when you do those things, like, no one's going to be like, that sucked.
Yeah.
But they might be like, hey, let's like pull back on the chorus, and you just need to be like, sweet, like,
thank you.
And write it in your hurt feelings journal and move on, like, it's not worth getting upset about.
Yeah.
No one's doing it because they think you suck as an audio engineer. They're doing it because we just want it to translate that Foley artist concept. We want to look at the screen and we want it to be like, yep, that those guys are battling for out there and working their butts off. I've just translated it. I made it sound awesome, exactly like what I'm seeing in front of me, and that's the ultimate goal.
I think more now than ever, I'd like to see more people take me up on the offer to just open up the space ad hoc, just whenever you're available. Like, because we've got a brand new context. I think in 2.5 years, I've been taken up like 4 times on like, oh, hey, can I just come in and have a play with something?
Yeah.
That's always available.
Yeah, the
you know
CL5
what I mean? Like,
is pretty permanently.
Pretty much permanently.
Pretty
at the
permanent.
moment.
For the time being. Yeah, exactly.
In the studio. So come in and, like, if you need a hand with getting multi-tracks or whatever, like, we can give you a hand with that. Like, get them on the computer.
Totally.
If we just have...
And at that point, I always, for me personally, like doing something new, I want to get in there, press buttons until I break it, and then work out how to get it back. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like,
yep.
Just make it terrible and then pull it back
in. In here, you're actually hearing literally, it's exactly what you're going to get on a Sunday.
Yeah.
It's not
correct. Yeah.
Oh, I'm missing the usually there's so much drum spill on the stage. It's not even worth coming in and doing a virtual sound check. Well, A, it is anyway. But B, in this context, it's the same. Like,
totally.
Especially once we can just get one awesome sounding recording from a Sunday, that'll be the most effective thing. So I think we just need to keep working on getting those tracks.
There's no big buckets of water out in the auditorium to suck up any sound like on a normal Sunday at the moment.
Right.
Like, it is literally direct straight into the microphone into this console.
Yeah.
And straight into this microphone into that iMac recording the audio. So it's the same. Like, there is no difference in that. So that's awesome.
I did have one other thought.
Yeah.
Vocally, and this is something where, again, I think we need to just not reassess, but just like brainstorm. And honestly, when I say that, I mean like anyone that has an idea, please write in Slack. Like, if you hate Slack, let's move that conversation to Facebook, because I think it's that important, is how we can make the visual, the audio, the everything like work the best. And I think at the moment, drums, how they are, it for me, it's a sticking point, because it's so hard to process a vocal for like a recording for like in this setting anyway, let alone when it's got drums in it. And so again, like any vocal we're hearing on a recording is almost never from the stage. First of all, it's actually like redone in a studio. And I guarantee you these days, like if you watch enough tutorials on recording vocals, like modern sounding vocals, the vocalist is not here for a condenser. Let me turn this sideways. They're not here. They're here. And it's that, like, they say sort of 6 inches away from a capsule is about the ideal. So yes, on a stage, we're probably not going to ask them to give us like 6 inches worth of separation for like that space and like a brighter vocal sound. But when they're here, this sucks as well, and it just you will never be able to get rid of that proximity thing to the point where it sounds like a bright modern vocal. So I think we need to try and find a balance somehow and strike a balance. And I think it's just a conversation that can't be had like, Blaine's opinion is that we put a screen up on the drums, so let's do that. Yeah. Well, I mean, at the moment, I haven't heard a better suggestion. So, but I'm like, I want to find something that works for everyone, not something that works for audio only.
Yeah. We might just hit one more question then, and then call it, and we might come back. I know we were going to hit some compression stuff, but maybe round 2 we can.
And I think I'll throw I'll find a super good tutorial at least. From a studio setting, so at least we can apply some concepts to this, or you'll be able to.
And this last question probably ties off into actually what we were talking a bit about. Trevor was asking like if there's any room to develop or set up a CL5 scene where we are now as the master scene like we used to have to get that specifically that delivers the best stream sound.
Sure. So this is I don't know. Yeah, no, you're probably not going to see that. But on here we have Nexus Online DL Startup. That's Dave Lewis's one. We also have Nexus Online 2.0. So that is currently the next most current setup scene that we have standard. No. Hang on, let me try something else, Blaine. Contrast.
It's a super awkward angle for that camera.
It is, it's Struggle Street.
That's all right.
Cool.
But there are basically there is a master scene.
It's getting closer, I think, and I think
Halfway
probably
at
what
least.
the thing to say is like Dave probably hasn't been entirely happy yet, even when he's done it. So I think he's just trying to keep making these small tweaks to like get to the point where like, okay, I'm okay with this scene now, and I think we can use this as a starting point. I think one thing that we really need to work on and have as across whatever master scene ends up is like a really awesome master bus compression settings.
Yeah.
And use something that's a standard. Like, don't change it. Change the threshold based on where your levels are actually outputting on that Sunday. But we need to be like, okay, guys, we only hit it at like, we're talking 3 dB max of compression at the peaks, and that's sort of what we want for the stream mixes. So like that sort of a thing is something that we probably can at least try and lock down. Our output compression is going to be pretty set.
Yep.
Even like EQ on that master bus as well, like just really tweaking something, like dialing something. I know Mick's had some good thoughts on that in the past for out in the auditorium. So maybe it's like a couple of heads need to get together and have a bit of a round table in here, like 2 or 3 people maintaining social distancing.
Totally.
To actually like have some opinions that like get it, enough of a middle point that still sounds good.
So I'll just point out. So this is what David was using. This is what I was using. This is the compressor on the master bus going out. So stereo left and right. And so we are not adding any more input in. We are adding an extra 4 dB out at a ratio of 2 to 1 at a threshold of, is that +8? Yeah, I think so. I know, jokes, -12 it's sitting at. So this is what David and I found was really nice.
Cool.
On Sunday. So
and 2 to 1 makes sense. We just want it to be a light, again, like it's a light compression at the end. Like if you're getting these huge fluctuations at that point, like from your peaking, like where it's peaking, and you're still getting like, this is when it's really loud, and this is when it's really, really loud, and this is when it's like quite loud. It should really be like all sitting around that zone anyway. And
totally,
this master bus compressor is just to like kind of keep things together so they don't ever get too extreme or,
Yeah, and David and I found that honestly, like we were getting no more than peaking for maybe like even 3 dB gain reduction.
Yeah, great. That's about right.
Because that's not what this compressor is made for, right? This compressor is made to just make sure we're not absolutely blowing out the back end of the stream. It's to add a bit of color. And this, honestly, like next time that you're in here and able to be in here,
turn it
talk
off,
to
turn it
Andy, bypass it. It is incredible the difference it makes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty spectacular what this comp on the back end does to your mix.
And again, like if you're kind of happy with the balance, this is like comes back to sort of some of the concepts we were talking about earlier. If you're happy with the balance of your mix, you're happy overall, you're like, oh, maybe like the vocals and that sort of range is just still not really like sparkly enough or whatever.
Yeah.
Do it here. Like do it just prior to this compressor. Do it on the output, like on the master bus. Just add a good sounding EQ with just like a really, really, really wide Q and just like 1.5, 2 dB max of like whatever frequency you're hearing and play with it. Pull it up till you hear it and then pull it right back down to like 1 or 2 dB. And you may not like, again, switch it on and off. You may not exactly hear it, but you know you've affected the right frequency and just, pull it down till it's like, it's almost not noticeable. Yeah. And you'll find that it'll probably, again, translate really well. You're like, I was listening on my headphones and it needed a bit brighter or it needed a bit more warmth, then just add it at the end.
I think they call that chutzpah.
Yeah, chutzpah or the kavorka.
Cool.
That's different.
Let's wrap her up there.
Yeah.
Hey? Thanks, Locky and Blaine.
Cheers. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, hit Blaine and I up, probably on Slack. Like we both
whatever.
work.
Like if you prefer a different medium, sure.
Yep.
Like I said to Andy, like if people want to actually if you want to ask them specific questions, feel free to privately just send me a Facebook message or in Slack. If we want to do a Google Hangout just as like a chat, if people want to discuss some of this stuff or ask questions
on a more conversational format.
Yeah, a bit more conversational. Like I know Nee's like, oh, it's great. I just don't understand most of what you're saying. And I'm like, totally reasonable because there's so much jargon. But for the guys that do understand it, hopefully this was useful. Yeah. And I'm happy to clarify if there's something you actually like any musicians or singers or whatever listening, they're like, oh, I think that might be useful for me, but I just don't really get it. Just ask me the question directly and hopefully I can break it down for you, I think.
For
or
sure.
at least give you the right video to watch.
Yeah. And
do it better.
Any questions, hit Blaine or myself up or David is really good. He's helped build this scene. Like he was the first one to mix on this and everyone else has just built on top of that.
You might call him the architect of rock and roll.
I can tell you what
Richard.
colour the lights turn when you press them.
Yeah, when the channel's on,
orange.
The channel activation button goes orange.
Oh, dang.
Close.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Cool.
Thanks everyone for sticking around and getting involved. And we'll see you next week for the next session. So
cool.
Yeah.
Cheers,
right.
team.
Peace out.
Thanks so much.